We are finishing up our chapter on the age of exploration with this final section 10 of the Columbian Exchange. So this is the typed outline that you want to refer to when getting information about the Columbian Exchange. So remember, if you can't print this off, just kind of jot it down in a notebook, and then you can fill it in as you watch the recorded PowerPoint. When we take a look at the Columbian Exchange during the time of exploration, we have just a general description to get us started. The Columbian Exchange is the global transfer of plants, animals, and foods during the colonization of the Americas. So, in other words, what's happening is plants, animals, and different types of foods are being transferred from the old world, which is parts of Asia, Europe, and Africa, that's what is considered the old world, to the new world, which of course has been the Americas that have been discovered. So that's the new world. So if you're looking at your typed outline, that information can be put on your number 1. So let's take a closer look at the actual items being transferred. If we're talking about from the Americas, so these are items that when the explorers discovered the Americas, the New World, they found items that did not exist in Europe, Asia, or Africa. And those items were corn and potatoes. Those were considered the most important food items that were introduced to the old world. Okay? So if we're specifically going to take a look at the potato, that is considered very important food item for the people of Ireland and Russia. And the reason this crop is so important to these two countries, it's because Ireland and Russia have large populations of the poor, and the potato is very easy and cheap to grow. So we know it can feed a large number of people. And again, when you're dealing with countries that have large populations of the poor, they are looking for something that is easy to grow, as well as the price is going to be right for these people to be able to purchase. So that's why the potato is extremely important to the people that live in Ireland and Russia. You can also put on your number 2 other items that are found in the Americas and they are being transferred to the old world, which again would be parts of Asia, Europe, and Africa, are things like tomatoes, pineapples, tobacco, the cocoa bean, which is used to make chocolate. I mean, can you imagine, for example, being in one of the cities in Italy and they had never had tomatoes, but thanks to them being introduced to tomatoes that came from the Americas, now they're known for their tomato-based pastas, okay? Their pizzas, for example. So, this truly is going to have an impact on the foods that the people eat now in parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa. We also know another effect, if you look at your number 3, is people's diets are improving. So if their diets are improving, that led to improved overall health, which means people are going to live longer than they had before they were introduced to these foods. And so if people are living longer, we know that that's going to affect the population. The population is going to increase. There's going to be more people because less are dying with an improved diet. So once again, it's important that you are studying these new items that are being introduced to the old world, Asia, Europe, and Africa, and they're coming from the New World, which are different parts of the Americas, North America, Central America, South America. Okay, now we're going to flip it and take a look at what was coming from the Old World and now being transferred to the New World. So from the Old World, which again is parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa, we know that these settlers are bringing with them things like horses, cattle, and pigs. Okay, I put on the outline that it's mainly the Spanish that are carrying these items with them on their ships when they are going to the New World. They are also bringing with them rice, wheat, bananas, and black-eyed peas. Okay, we know that in the New World, there's a lot more land where these items can be grown in larger amounts. So there's definitely more money that could be made from the sale of these goods. You know, if you can grow it in bulk, then obviously you have more to sell, which means more money in the end. Okay. Also coming into the New World from, of course, the Old World, the negative, the downside is disease, specifically smallpox. So we know that particular disease is being imported into the New World by the European settlers, and it's going to be introduced into the population of the New World, which will have a devastating effect on the Native American people. Okay, so that's the negative side of Columbian exchange. Now, if you want to go back to the positive for the natives, they're being introduced to new food items. Just went over that with the rice, the wheat, the bananas, as well as certain animals that the natives in America have never seen before. Imagine, seeing a horse for the first time. I mean, that had to have been frightening at first because you have no idea what it's going to do. Or a cow or a pig, for example. Okay, so again, the Native American tribes are going to benefit greatly from having these animals introduced to them. So we can see with this transfer of certain goods from the Old to the New World, there are many different positives as well as negatives for the Native American people. If you look at your number 6 on your typed out line, it also gives an effect as far as trade goes. So trade grew between the Old and the New World, and with that growth comes a commercial revolution. So what I've done is I've given you a quick description of what the commercial revolution is. It's when all the trade and new business taking place leads to this massive revolution. So in other words, the trade that's taking place between the Old and the New World and all of the business transactions that are taking place between the two will lead to a commercial revolution. We also know that more people are going to be joining the middle class. So there's going to be a rise in social class status with all of this trade taking place. Now on the next slide, you're going to see a very helpful chart. And when I say helpful, it's going to be helpful for study purposes. I've included this chart on our Canvas page for you to try to print out. But again, if you can't print it out, you can just refer to it when you study. So here's the chart I'm talking about. You can see here that here at the top, all of these items are coming from the New World and they're headed to the Old World, Asia, Europe, and Africa. So you've got gold and silver coming over to the Old World. Corn, potatoes, beans, vanilla, chocolate, tobacco, cotton. And then from the Old World, you have going to the New World items such as wheat, sugar, rice, coffee, horses, cows, and pigs. There's the disease, smallpox, measles, the plague, influenza, etc. And then we know that from Africa, we have the transfer of people. The enslaved Africans are being transferred over to the New World. And remember, that's what triangular trade is primarily involved or focused on, okay? So Columbian exchange, we're looking at transferring food, plants, animals, as well as people in some circumstances. The triangular trade is mainly the transfer of Africans to the New World. So don't get the two confused, because there are major differences between the two. So when you study, pay attention to those differences. So with this increase of trade between the Old and the New World, that brings up the economy and the economic system that was being used at this time of history. The economic system used was mercantilism. Very important you understand what mercantilism is. So in number 7, I'm giving you some of the characteristics for mercantilism. One is that all profits went to the government. Okay, so you as an individual cannot make money from the things that you grow. Okay, this is not capitalism where you can have your own private land and do that. Mercantilism is all profits go to the government. You have no control over it as an individual. Another characteristic is that nations that collect gold and silver are more powerful than those that do not, and the gold and silver will be used to build up their armies. Okay, and we talked about Spain being a good example. They're constantly bringing shiploads of gold and silver into their country. Now, yes, that causes inflation, but it's also going to help them have a stronger nation because their armies are going to be much better. Another characteristic is that governments will demand more exports than imports, thus establishing a favorable balance of trade. So what that means, a country operating under mercantilism is more concerned about selling their goods rather than buying. They want to sell more than they actually buy or bring in, and they will closely monitor the trade to make sure that they are making money. So that's what we mean by having more exports than imports and establishing a favorable balance of trade. One final characteristic of mercantilism is colonies will supply raw materials for the mother country. So for example, Spain is a mother country to its colonies over in the Americas. And those colonies are going to be supplying certain materials back to Spain so that Spain can take those raw materials, make manufactured goods to sell. Okay, so Spain, as an example of a mother country, is depending on its colonies for raw materials. Okay, that's another characteristic of mercantilism. So when you study mercantilism, all the characteristics for number 7 are going to be equally important, so don't skip over any of them. All right, so finally let's take a look at number 8. As the commercial revolution grew, so did towns. Okay, so as more and more trade is taking place, obviously you're going to have more people in these towns to get in on that practice. We know that many people at this time, or I should say most people, were practicing farming. You know, that was the way of living. Compared to today, there's only about 1% of Americans making their living from farming. So you can see big difference in the lifestyles of people back in the 14 and 1500s compared to today's lifestyles. So that brings us to the end of the information on Roman numeral 10, as well as we are finished with the chapter on the age of exploration or discovery. So we are now going to be ready for a test. The next video that I have for you is going to give you some important tips about studying for the test, how the test is set up, and of course if you have any questions, it will be important that you ask.